Jesus has already revealed to us with absolute precision what to do in the first 24 hours of the tribulation. Matthew 24 should not be read as a set of ideas open to human imagination, nor as parables subject to poetic interpretations. It is a manual, an emergency map, a set of direct, specific, urgent instructions spoken by the one who knows the end from the beginning. These verses were not given for theological curiosity, but for spiritual and physical survival. Jesus was describing realities that would unfold within hours, not distant theories. And many are shocked when they discover that there are 5 clear directives outlined by Christ himself, teachings that most Christians have never heard in a practical or objective way. But before anything unfolds before our eyes, there is an inevitable question that crosses centuries. Do you know these instructions well enough to obey them without hesitation? Because in the decisive moment, there will be no time for debates, doubts, interpretations, or quick searches. There will only be the command and the response. The first instruction is simple, yet absolutely decisive. See and recognize immediately. Jesus makes this crystal clear in Matthew 24:15, when he declares, "When therefore ye shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand." That final phrase, placed in parentheses like an eternal whisper, is not a footnote nor an editorial comment. It is Christ himself leaning toward the reader, calling every generation to personal responsibility. If you are reading this, then you must understand. He demands discernment, vigilance, preparation. It is not enough to hear occasional sermons or to depend on someone else's knowledge. You must see, interpret, and recognize the sign the instant it appears. This is the first instruction. Be informed. No one obeys commands they do not know. No one responds to a sign they cannot identify. Jesus expects his followers to study prophecy, dive into Daniel, and understand the historical and spiritual weight of the abomination of desolation. He does not call us to passivity, but to active, strategic vigilance, eyes awake, spirit alert, heart prepared. And that is why he insists throughout the chapter, "What I say unto you, I say unto all, watch." The tribulation will not begin with media explosions, official speeches, or global announcements. There will be no worldwide countdown. It will begin quietly, with an act performed in Jerusalem, in the temple, something most of the world will not notice. But you cannot be part of that unaware majority. When that sign appears, you must be able to say, "It is now. The time has begun. I must act immediately." The truth is harsh. Most Christians today could not explain what the abomination of desolation is, and according to Jesus, that ignorance may cost lives. For those who will be among the ones required to flee when the event occurs, and we will see who they are later, recognizing the sign will not merely be important, it will be a matter of survival. Because the first 24 hours will separate the vigilant from the distracted, the prepared from the indifferent, those who obey without hesitation from those paralyzed by doubt. And hesitation in that moment may be fatal, because Jesus' second instruction demands instant reaction. Instruction number 2 is direct, objective, with no room for debate. Flee immediately, without hesitation. At the very moment the abomination appears, Jesus gives one single order: flee. Matthew 24:16, KJV, declares, "Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." Jesus mentions Judea because that will be the epicenter, the ground zero of the event. Those who are there will be in immediate danger and must leave before the trap closes around them. But the principle is broader and echoes far beyond the borders of Jerusalem. When the Antichrist exalts himself as God and the tribulation officially begins, danger will spread rapidly. Revelation 12:17 makes this clear. "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." The dragon, Satan, will not wage war only in Judea. He will rise against all who remain faithful in every nation, on every continent. This is not limited to Judea. When Jesus commands his people to flee, he points to a specific destination, the mountains. This is not a casual detail or an abstract symbol. Throughout the entire biblical narrative, the mountains were the last refuge of the persecuted. Steep terrain, hidden caves, narrow passages, places where pursuers advance slowly and where any siege becomes difficult. Beyond that, they are far from major urban centers, where the system of the beast will establish itself with full force, with control, surveillance, restrictions, and immediate impositions. In the mountains there is water, vegetation, game, and above all, space and silence in which to hide. David found shelter among the mountains as he fled from Saul's rage, moving between caves, ridges, and ravines where the enemy's army simply could not reach him quickly. Elijah, exhausted and threatened, sought no walls nor human fortresses. His refuge was Horeb, the mountain where God's gentle whisper broke the silence. The Maccabees, resisting Seleucid tyranny, began their revolt among hills and stones, where harsh terrain became an ally. Across the whole biblical story, whenever the world became hostile, the servants of God ascended, and there, in the rugged and wild heights, they survived. That is why Jesus speaks with such clarity and weight. When the tribulation begins, run to the mountains. Do not go to the cities. And here we arrive at one of the greatest misunderstandings among modern readers. Many imagine Jesus expects an organized evacuation, a carefully planned strategy, an emergency blueprint prepared in advance. But Christ is not talking about grand schemes. He presents no supply lists, no detailed routes. He gives one word: flee. It is the language of absolute urgency. It is the kind of order given when every second matters, when any hesitation may be the line between escaping and being caught. It is the warning of one who knows that when the abomination of desolation is manifested, there will be no time for calculations, discussions, or calm reasoning. It will be a moment when thinking too much already means thinking too late. And the instructions that follow reveal how literal, how sharp, how intensely practical Jesus is, as someone describing a real and imminent scene. Instruction number 3 is a shock to anyone accustomed to human logic about protection and survival. Do not go back for anything. Christ descends to the level of everyday life. He describes real places, real movements, human reactions that anyone would naturally have. Imagine someone on the rooftop, perhaps resting after work, perhaps praying, perhaps watching the sunset over Jerusalem. Suddenly, the news arrives. The abomination of desolation has happened. The Antichrist has just declared himself God in the temple. Instinctively, anyone would rush downstairs to grab a prepared bag, gather food, water, documents, warn the family, rescue something valuable. But Jesus cuts through this natural impulse with an almost abrupt command: do not go down. Do not take anything from your house. Go. Another person is in the field, tending the land, living an ordinary day, and the news strikes like a blade slicing the air. The human mind will try to return, grab clothes, collect supplies, say goodbye, rescue stored money. But Jesus repeats, do not turn back. Do not even take your cloak. Go straight. This instruction sounds harsh because it is harsh. It is not exaggeration, not metaphor, not dramatization. It is a danger so immediate, so aggressive, so fast, that minutes, even seconds, may determine who escapes and who is found when the system of the beast rises with full force. In those first moments, the persecution will be sharp, sudden, and relentless. To reinforce this reality, Jesus cites one of the most disturbing examples in biblical history. In Luke 17:31-32, it is written, "In that day, he which shall be upon the housetop, let him not come down to take them away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife." Those 3 words, remember Lot's wife, carry a warning that echoes through the centuries. When God brought Lot and his family out of Sodom, he gave a simple command: flee. Do not look back. But Lot's wife hesitated. Her heart remained tied to the life she was leaving, to the past God was destroying. She looked and became a pillar of salt. She was so close to salvation. She was running with angels at her side. But she could not let go of her old life. And Jesus says, remember this, because at the beginning of the tribulation, the same mistake will cost lives. You may know the prophecy, you may recognize the sign, you may even take the first steps. But if your attachment to comfort, routines, possessions, and the world you built speaks louder than obedience, you may simply not escape in time. That is why inner preparation is not a spiritual luxury, it is survival. If you wait to reflect only when everything begins, your heart will want to go back for something. A bag, documents, money, objects that feel indispensable. But if you accept now that all of this may be lost, and still trust the command of Christ, then when the moment comes, you will obey without hesitation. You will flee without looking back. You will leave everything where it is, and you will save your life. Jesus values your life more than any earthly possession. The question is, do you? And here we see how deeply, almost personally, Christ cares for those who follow him. He does not merely tell you what to do when the sign appears. He gives an instruction that begins long before the event, an interior preparation, silent and necessary. He wants you ready before the world even realizes what is happening. Instruction number 4 is powerful. Understand the severity of what is coming. Jesus does not soften his words to make them more palatable. He does not say, it will be hard, but you'll manage somehow. He chooses total, absolute truth, because only those who grasp the gravity of the events will develop the urgency necessary to survive. Matthew 24, 21-22 declares, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Let these words breathe inside you. Such as was not since the beginning of the world, nor ever shall be. Jesus is declaring that nothing, absolutely nothing in human history compares to what is coming. Not the flood in the days of Noah, when the entire world was swallowed by water. Not the plagues of Egypt. Not the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. Not the plague that darkened medieval Europe. Not the wars that scarred the 20th century. The Great Tribulation will surpass all of these combined. It will be so devastating, so widespread, so absolute, that if God did not intervene, if he did not limit the duration of that period, not only would many die or most perish, but no flesh would survive. Humanity itself would be wiped from the earth. And that is exactly what the tribulation would accomplish if God allowed the clock to run its full course. Why does Jesus reveal something so terrible? Not to paralyze his followers with fear, but so they may grasp the seriousness of his words. When the true magnitude of the Great Tribulation finally reaches the heart, when you understand that it is a period without precedent in the history of the world, the commands of Christ stop sounding like optional counsel. They become living orders, urgent, vital, commands that mark the line between life and death, between escape or destruction, between remaining at God's side or being lost in the chaos. If Jesus says, flee, you flee. If he says, do not return, you do not return. If he says, pray, you pray, because nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be more serious than this. But in the midst of such a dark prophecy, Jesus leaves a ray of hope. A verse that shines like an open window in the heart of a storm. For the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. This is a direct act of divine mercy. God will supernaturally limit the duration of the tribulation, not because the world deserves compassion, for it does not, but because he has a people, his elect, and they must survive for his purposes to be fulfilled. For their sake, the days will be shortened. And here is the powerful implication. Your immediate obedience in the first 24 hours will place you among those who experience that mercy. Those who hesitate put themselves in danger. Those who obey come under divine protection, even in days of judgment. But Jesus, fully aware of human frailty, gives us one final warning, a warning directed especially to those who will be running, wounded, exhausted, with bodies weakened and souls stretched to the limit. Instruction number 5 is clear. Do not be deceived in the midst of chaos. When you are running for your life, when everything you owned has been left behind, when hunger tightens, when exhaustion weighs on your bones, when fear tries to suffocate your hope, it is in that moment that your vulnerability will be most dangerous. Jesus knows this, and that is why, after commanding his people to flee, he adds the warning. Matthew 24:23-26 declares, "Then, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not." Notice the setting. Jesus says then, meaning after the abomination of desolation, after believers begin to flee in that period of fear, loneliness, hunger, and exhaustion, false Christs and false prophets will arise. They will not be ridiculous pretenders. They will perform signs, wonders, supernatural manifestations so convincing that they would cause even the elect to waver, if that were possible. They will be dangerously persuasive. They will display power. They will appear wise, spiritual, miraculous, and desperation will tempt many to believe. And Jesus makes it clear, these manifestations will be real, but they will not come from God. These deceptions will be aimed like precise arrows, targeted directly at those who are weakest, the tired, the hungry, the wounded, those searching for answers, those who left everything behind and only want to survive one more day. The deception will be designed specifically to strike those who are fleeing, those living in caves and ravines, those starving, freezing, isolated, vulnerable, and thirsty for any sign of safety. And Jesus continues describing the target of this spiritual strategy, leaving no room for doubt about who the focus will be. The deception will be meticulously aimed at you, the true followers, those who will be scattered across the mountains, living among rocks and caves, searching for food, water, shelter, any direction that offers hope. These false anointed ones will not appear before the chaos when life is stable. They will not arise in times of peace, when discernment is clear and the mind is rested. They will come at the exact moment of vulnerability, when desperation opens cracks in the soul and circumstances cry out for a comforting voice. That is why Jesus insists with such firmness, "Believe them not. Do not go out. Do not believe." These warnings are not repeated by accident. He knows these deceivers will not offer ordinary lies, but falsehoods wrapped in signs, wonders, miracles, and demonstrations that will appear holy, yet will come directly from the enemy. They will say, "The Christ is in the desert. He is in a secret chamber. Follow me, he sent me." But Jesus, in his love, reveals everything beforehand. "I have told you in advance." These signs will not come from him, and then he establishes an absolute contrast, a truth that destroys every fraud. The true coming of Christ cannot be imitated. He makes certain that no one confuses the real return with human manifestations. When he comes again, there will be no rumors, no leaders pointing in a direction, no secret groups announcing appearances. It will not be something hidden, localized, or private. His coming will be like lightning tearing through the sky, an explosion of glory stretching across the earth from one end to the other, visible, thunderous, irresistible, universal. Everyone will see it, the righteous and the wicked, believers and unbelievers, kings and beggars. The entire world will witness the return of the Son of Man. Therefore, any hidden event, any secret appearance, any figure presenting himself as Christ away from the eyes of the world is not Christ. It is deception. And then we reach the conclusion that ties together everything Jesus taught. He did not give these instructions to create panic, but to preserve lives. The first 24 hours of the tribulation will be the most decisive period of your physical and spiritual existence. In that brief window, 5 divine commands will determine who survives and who is swallowed by the chaos. See and recognize the sign. Flee immediately. Do not return for anything. Understand the unprecedented severity. Do not be deceived in the chaos. These 5 instructions are like 5 keys that Christ places in the hands of his disciples. Keys of survival, wisdom, and faithfulness. And then, after all these warnings, comes the question that pierces the soul like an unavoidable echo. Will you treat the words of Jesus as suggestions or as commands? Because nothing he said is metaphor, nor symbolic language meant for distant interpretation. It is not prophetic poetry, nor a parable open to opinion. It is literal. It is urgent. It is prophetic. It is real. Every instruction Jesus gave was meant for a specific moment, a moment that will come upon the earth like nothing before it. And those who listen to his words will live. Those who ignore them will not. But even in the midst of a scene filled with judgment, a glorious truth rises like a flame that cannot be extinguished. God will shorten the days for the sake of his elect. He still reigns, he still sees, he still cares. The Lord will not abandon his people to darkness. He will not allow evil to rule without limits. The tribulation will have an end because the mercy of God has a target, you. And then, after everything, after the fleeing, the endurance, the chaos, the tears, and the perseverance, Jesus will come, not hidden, not silent, not discreet, but in unfathomable power, in overwhelming glory, in a light no man can behold without trembling. And all those who remained faithful, all who kept watch, all who obeyed his words, even when the entire world called it madness, will be vindicated. They will be preserved. They will be welcomed into the kingdom that shall never end. See you soon.